Hey, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on creating your product management practice. My name is Mike Zorno. I'll be your host and guide for this session. Today, our guest is John Helms, who will share his insights, his experiences on how to create a winning product management strategy to help speed up your time to market. So, as our goals is with these sessions, we are trying to get a monthly workshop going for our emerging startups. So MSPs that have an idea, a vision, startup companies that have a new product or integration they want to create with ConnectWise. So we want to help with on how we can navigate, leverage the ConnectWise economy with these sessions. And last session we went through finding your product market fit. Today is product management strategy. In the future, we're going to go through dev strategy, managing finances, go-to-market strategy. So a lot of these future sessions are going to be great for anyone that wants to, get involved with ConnectWise with their products and integration. So without further ado, want to introduce John Helms, our Director of Product Management for the security side from ConnectWise. John, welcome.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to be here. So Mike's been around for 12 years. I've been here for all 12 of those years. It's been a good ride.
We started
management.
Yeah, we started together back in the lab tech support days. That's how long it's been. We had a different product with a different name, but we both moved over to lab tech product management probably about 10 years ago. John, why don't you take us through the journey of product management at ConnectWise?
So I wish I had my bio slide that I use in my presentation. So joined LabTech Graveyard Shift in 2011. There was a wonderful launch of 2011.2, and that's where the gray hair started. And then shortly after that, moved over to LabTech Product Management under Tony Thomas and team. And then Tony moved on to do better things, bigger and better things at ConnectWise, and we kept LabTech, moved over to Automate, moved into platform product management. And in 2021, I decided to take a director role on the cybersecurity side and build up the product management team on that side.
Awesome. Well, we're going to leverage your expertise that you've gained over the past 11, 12 years on the product management side. So last week in our session, we went through the business model canvas. And with the business model canvas, it really is your one page. What are we going to do with our products? As you see on screen here, in the middle, your value prop. What are we delivering? What problems are we solving? What needs are we meeting with this product or with this integration? And being able to use something like this to get everything on one page to figure out what is your product, what is your direction, where your cost, your revenue streams, roadmaps, timelines. It gives you a full vision of what you want your product to be before you start getting into the nitty gritty of doing the PM and dev of those products. So this week we thought we'd go into the product management aspect, and I think in this using the same canvas. From the product management side, we can have that same visibility into different items that you need to go in the PM practice. So I'm going to call you Helms. We've known each other too long. I can't call you John. Helms, talk about implementing your a product management practice. What's your philosophy around building it with, picking the resources, defining roles, responsibilities, things like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is understanding, and I'm going to attempt to not channel my inner Tony Thomas and start quoting books, but it absolutely, you start with why. That no doubt, if you don't understand the why, no one else is going to understand. So when you start there, that's not only do you understand it, everyone else gets involved and starts understanding it early in the process. So it's a big transition into product management, and I want to call out that something that's what we find difficult, especially in the space. So in the MSP space, a big difficulty that we have is converting engineers, devs, your average technician, into product managers, because they want to know, they know how, and that's why it's a start with why. So it's really hard. It took me years as well. I mean, my background is IT admin, network admin, not to date myself, but Windows 3.5.1, NT 3.5.1, probably before Mike was born. But understanding that, and it's a difficult transition. We've had many come over and try it and do well. We've had many that have come over and said, I think I want to build. I like getting my hands dirty. It's a big transition when that's what you're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the key things with using something like the business model canvas, where you can get that visibility into that why, of knowing why you are creating the product and what problems it's going to solve and what value it delivers, more than the technical side. But there's a place for some of that technical ability within product management. But I think, again, starting with that why, in my opinion, is some of the market and user research. I think that's one of the most important things of getting feedback on your ideas, on your vision. How do you go about performing market and user research on new products that are coming to market?
Yeah, new products are typically the most difficult. We just had a small announcement at IT Nation Secure last week around Security 360. It's difficult when you're launching a net new product, because while you're trying to discover the problem and understand the challenges that your partners or customers are seeing, you don't want to give it away what you're doing. So it gets tricky. But yeah, so we use the IT Nation events mostly. From a product standpoint, we're in focus groups. If we're not doing sessions, we're in focus groups, and those can be done at any time, anywhere. But it's good to have 20 or 30 of your customers in a room and getting their feedback instantly and adjusting what your plans are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things I remember most from our lab tech product management days was doing a lot of these partner interviews around what their wants and needs are, and not letting not leading the witness, not dictating what you want to create, but rather hear from the customer base. What do you need to be successful? What does success look like on your side? As you alluded to in the beginning of the chat, the old Simon Sinek, start with why. Like, why are we creating a security dashboard? Why do people need visibility into this? And letting them tell you what are the most important things. What do you need to see? And I think being able to get that feedback during the research phase is supremely important, to be able to dictate how are we going to implement this actual feature in product, or create product from whole cloth in that startup phase. So you said you talked about 20 or 30 partners in that. What are the most important things you're trying to hear from them in those interviews or in those focus groups?
So I'm really solving for two things. So we bring an engineer along, mainly because we need them to get excited too. And when it's just me talking, it's hard for anybody to get excited. I get that. But once they start hearing partners and how we're gonna fill their need and what their challenges are, it makes them start thinking about, oh, well, I see where there's specific challenges. And when I'm in here doing this from an engineering standpoint, I can actually, oh, but that partner said this. And hey, if we do this, so it gets them really involved in the beginning. Um, and it's really more of an open dialogue. It is. Most of mine are run as a conversation. I don't do a lot of the talking. I ask one or two questions, and then you end up with customers with, well, I resolve it with this, and then the other one says, well, that didn't work for me, and then I do this, and you end up with 10 different people having a conversation on how to solve the problem. And so they're offering the solutions for you, because at the end of the day, we're all that, most of the people in the room were technicians at one point, if not still.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've kind of gone through that discovery phase. You're in the validation phase as you're talking to users. Before you get to build, you've got a lot of ideas on paper. What do you do about prioritizing and road mapping all those ideas you had during that ideation phase?
So, luckily we have a really good UI UX team here. So we get mock-ups early, to where it's not we're not, from the back in the days when we used to go and just build it. And then we go, oh, well, why did you do that? Well, now I can do that in mock-ups, and I can do it where they're interactive, and we can walk through those different pieces, and they can tell me which ones are valuable. And it really sets me up for what's MVP, what's phase 2, what's phase 3. And so by having that and being able to have the end user click through it, you get that immediate value, and you're really setting your roadmap at that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think getting that initial feedback of, here's the ideas, putting that to an actual UI UX, this is how we would implement that, and getting feedback again has been crucial in a lot of success in either net new products or features on the ConnectWise side, but speaks to what startups can do in their environments to be able to get that feedback quickly of, this is what they told me, let's mock it up. None of this has to function. We just have to mock it up and say, this is what the screen would look like, this is what we're solving for in this initial, as you said, the MVP, minimum viable product, to be able to have that visibility and get that feedback again. So it's creating feedback loops very quickly in the validation phase before we get to building. So as we jump into the build phase, how do you create the technical specs? Is that a pure product management function? Is that more of a technical analyst? How would you approach that as a putting yourself in the feet of a emerging startup here?
Yeah. So and that's where I get engineering involved early. Like I said, I stick with the why, and because I know how I might do it, but I've also not had to do it in a long time, and I'm probably not going to do it right. So by walking through with engineering, it really gets their creative juices flowing as you're walking through this, and it allows you for them to adapt quickly. And getting early adopters, even if an early adopter understands that the product's not ready, but I need your feedback. We've had different programs over the years, and having someone in that really early green stage of I want evergreen. It slipped my mind. In the evergreen stage of, hey, do you have a test environment? Can you test this out? Is it useful? And getting that type of information quick, and that feedback is priceless.
Absolutely. I think that's something we've learned and seen. Anecdotally, that used to happen with lab tech. I think before you and I even started, Greg Burke was creating custom builds for Vernon and Kevin Gibson as they requested new feature. Truly, very innovative way to do it. May not be scalable to do that way.
May or may not have been in production.
Yeah. So again, back to the perspective of an emerging startup. ConnectWise, we certainly have resources. But how do you deal with limited development resources as you're going through this? So you've created an outline, you've got a rough idea of this is what version 1, 2, 3 is going to look like, but how do you deal with some of the limited development resources in the creation of products? Could it be even limited PM resources? What are your suggestions for some of those emerging startups to get around some of those?
Yes, and that's actually a really big one, because definitely limited resources is top of the list, and that's all the way around because everybody's wearing multiple hats.
Mm-hmm.
There are consulting firms that assist in situations like this. It's don't it goes back to get your plan together. You know what you want to do, but you can't really talk about it too soon. So make sure you have everything in line, and keeping with that, understand that you do have limited resources, and maybe you have to not talk about it for 6 months to get it done. And that's a very difficult part. And don't expect to not have long hours and weekends.
Yeah, I think it's working lockstep with engineering and having a lot of that visibility into what are going to be the issues with the biggest, in a Jira term, biggest story points. Like, what are the things going to take longest to develop and create within the product to know, this is a key feature. Every partner that we interviewed said this was an absolute must-have, so it's got to go in V1. So being able to get a hold of that and being again lockstep with engineering to figure out how long is this going to take to develop, to create, before you're able to start messaging, especially internally and externally, because we all know salespeople get very excited and want to sell immediately, and they see a really cool feature, a really cool product, and they want to get out there and sell it right away. So ensuring that everyone's on the same page as we go through the creation process.
Yeah,
and I think
and I was gonna say, do remember that it can't all go into MVP.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tough decision, but this is one of those corny focus group games we used to do, where you buy a feature, Monopoly money, and say, hey, here's the 15 features. While I think they're all priority ones, tell me which ones are the most important to you. And you have $50 in Monopoly money, and each feature's $10.
Mm-hmm.
Pick your 5. And it actually works out really well. It's a corny game, but it makes you understand what's the most important, because it can go from MVP to phase 2 real fast.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that we've heard most in feedback is, everything equally is important, but once as a phrase of put your money where your mouth is, let's actually see what is the most important to you that helps the product team make those tough decisions, and what is going into the initial release, and what's has to stay on hold until we launch and either create revenue or get more feedback on the product so we can improve it more. So we're in the build phase, so we've kind of gone through the discovery phase in the market user research, validating concepts with some of that user research and with the engineering team. Now in the build phase, let's one of the things I think a lot of people get stuck up on is time allocated for integrations. How do you and the engineering team go about creating deadlines and creating a roadmap for the business to consume, saying, this is our idea, this is our product, this is our timeline. How do you communicate that, and how do you go through that allocation process of this is when we want to launch and when we think we're going to be ready?
Well, the first part is that's when those long hours and weekends come, because once you set that date, there's two things. There's everyone wants to release by a deadline. But a very key factor in there is understanding that you should release when ready. Like, you can get all of the marketing material and all the sales enablement and all the documents that you need to release, but if the product's not ready, it's not going to hit the market like you had hoped. And you're not wasting anybody's time by getting the docs ready. They're already ready. You're going to need them. So, release when ready it's not usually what management wants to hear, because they like dates. And so it's a really tricky one. You give a date, give a quarter if you can. And management thinks it's first of quarter, you think it's end of quarter. So meet somewhere in between. But it's a delicate. It's delicate every single release.
I think alignment seems to be the key theme in that response there. Making sure that PM, dev, engineering, and the business are all aligned on, this is when we think it's going to be ready. These are the necessities of what has to be in there as we move to launch. So, everyone's doing everything they can to meet those deadlines. What happens when you hit that drop dead date and you're not ready? What's your response?
Well, as product management, it's on you 100%. Protect dev at all cost. But you're the one that gave the date. And you level set, and you do it as soon as regardless of what anybody says. You did not know 1 hour before the release date. You knew a couple of days before, and you have time to level set. It's be honest, because it's a lot harder to backpedal if you're trying to explain why you didn't release on the 7th and it's the 7th.
I think I lost you for a second there, but I think level setting with everyone around the dates, times. Once you get that word from engineering that you are, hey, this is not going to be completed on time, letting the business know around some of those challenges that you might be having to be clear in what dates will actually be. So. All right. Well, so we've gone through. All right, we've discovered, we've validated, we've gone through the build phase. We're into the launch phase. You've decided through user feedback, through internal meetings, what your MVP is, your minimum viable product, in regards to integration. What do you guys do with feedback after the first release of the MVP? Or is there steps before even releasing the MVP, like a pilot or beta phase that you guys go through?
Yeah. So, especially on a fresh release of a new product, you always need to allocate. You're probably not in sprints yet, but you need to allocate X percentage during the follow-ups after the release, because you need to be able to address the bugs. QA is not going to catch them all. You're not going to catch them all. No one's going to catch them all. So you follow up quickly with those, and you're still marching towards V2 or phase 2, but understanding that it's finally in someone's hands. This has been in our hands for so long. We had tunnel vision at some point. And so getting it in, and they're using it the way that you didn't think about it. It's not good or bad. They're just using it a different way. And so being able to address, 25% or allocate 25% of your time to making sure that bugs are addressed quickly on that initial release. And maybe it impacts your V2 release date. Maybe not. But it's as long as you're planning on it, you're usually good from that side.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things I learned most in product management was the, feedback loop. So, how are you going to create that feedback loop to gather and implement customer feedback, whether it be bugs, new features, getting, what does V2 look like? They've gone, maybe a long time partner that's gone through all of your initial market user research phase. What do you do to create those feedback loops?
So these days we're heavily using our own virtual community, as well as other platforms. I'll say there's a couple of Slack channels that we use that aren't owned by ConnectWise, but it's anything you have that, whether it's a community driven or one particular partner or vendor, just use whatever platform you have at your disposal. From our standpoint, the virtual community is where we go, because it is ours.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the things is creating community is one of the biggest things that you need to do in having a successful product. Having people understand that they are heard, that they have input into the product, really gives them some buy-in to want to invest and utilize your product, to be able to know that someone's listening on the other end, that we've got a way to say, this is what I truly would want out of this product. And I think that's kind of goes to one of the last points in this product management canvas is, how will this product or feature be measured through KPIs? When do you go through the process of creating those KPIs as to how you want to be measured, and when do you start actually measuring that?
This one's always fun. So in the original, when you're speccing it out in the very beginning, you should be thinking about these KPIs. Did you solve the challenges that you mentioned in the beginning that were the problems you were solving? But then also understanding how to collect that data. And this one is an ongoing thing for everyone. You start implementing some form of analytics, whichever option you choose. But then defining it, because not only do you look to see, did you solve their challenge, but what steps did they take to get there? So you need more than just, oh, well, okay, so I showed them this and they got this result. Yep, I solved their challenges. It's not that simple. It's did you solve it quickly? Because you're looking at the performance of the page. You're looking at all different aspects of it. And when you get into formal story writing, it should just be that's default questions that are in there. Does it meet X, Y, and Z criteria? And that should be on every story as you go down through the path. And that's why I say you do it in the beginning, but I also laugh because I often forget in the beginning, and then I'm panicking at the end trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I think being able to ensure that you know how it's going to be measured, the business is going to know how it's going to be measured, so that everyone's on the same page to know, again, what does that success look like? How can we ensure that our customers, clients are seeing value out of this, and that we know that we're hitting the marks. Okay. So I think we kind of went through all the different phases of build, launch, iterating to the next phase of product. So we've gone through the initial launch, got feedback from partners. What do you do for V2? It's essentially starting the process completely over, where you're doing market research again, validating, building, relaunching with V2. Is it similar, or is it a little bit different for V2 of the product?
It's very similar, but you also have most of the data. So when you were doing your initial research, you didn't know what was going to be V1 and V2. You just knew what you wanted to do. So V2 and V3 could have been planned out through all of this. Now that will obviously change over time because of lessons learned, and you quickly understand that maybe my customer segment was wrong. Maybe I went after the wrong persona. But it looks like I solved it for this one. So maybe I do have to change a little bit, but for the most part, the canvas is built. And now you're just zooming into exactly what the deliverable for V2 and V3 are.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's all I had on the the grilling you with questions phase. I guess one more wrap up. You just talked about lessons learned. You've been in PM for 11, 12 years now. What's your biggest lesson learned that you've had and through your experience?
Never feel the need to talk. Always listen. You'll hear more if you just let people talk.
I think
It's exactly what I was saying about the focus groups. Just let people talk.
Yeah, I think that's a great one to end it on, is to be able to get that feedback, listen to what partners are truly saying, why they want something. As again, back to your Simon Sinek, start with why. You got to ask them why 3 times to get to the crux of the issue, what they're really trying to solve for. Like going through patch management feature. It's like, oh, it's going to save me time. Well, why do you need it to save you time? Oh, well, I don't have enough technicians. They're like, well, why don't you have enough technicians? Well, I'm not creating enough revenue. It's like, all right, so the true why is this is going to create revenue for you, and that's the real reason. So being able to get that feedback from your customers and during your research is super important. So all right. Well, thank you, John. So, to summarize some of this, I think, starting with that business model canvas slide from last week is going to really, give you that information to start with to ensure that you have your value prop. You know what resources you're going to utilize. How you're going to distribute it via different channels, what segments you're targeting, and then using this week's product management canvas really gets into the road mapping, timeline, prioritization, KPIs of giving another tool for your team to use in the creation process of the product. So really having these things is kind of the backbone of your journey of ensuring that you have these specific documents, these specific assets that you can leverage to create product management strategy. So as we go into next week, we're going to be covering our development strategy, and we'll be going through the pros and cons of developing internally, using a third-party development house to create developments externally. So looking forward to that session. It'll be the second Tuesday of July. So looking forward to seeing everyone there. John, again, appreciate the time today. Thanks for all your insight, and we will talk with everyone next month. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike.